Hello again, everybody, and welcome into Gamecock Central Radio. Emerson Phillips with Wes Mitchell. We've got a recruiting update for you today. Wes, how you getting along this morning?
Good, man. Hanging in there. Plenty of coffee as we head down the final stretch to National Signing Day, 13 days away.
Right, 13 days out, and it's been cold here in South Carolina. You got to do something to keep warm, so I'm with you on the coffee. Been drinking a good bit myself. Wes, official visits for Gamecock football coming up this weekend. The Gamecocks will have a number of prospects on campus for official visits. Fill us in.
Yeah, I think you have to start with Javon Lim, four-star guy, committed to Georgia right now, but very, very open. He committed to the previous staff, and Emerson, it's actually a very unique situation for this kid. He set the visit, like I said yesterday. I talked to him on the phone, and, I got to chatting with him, and basically he's being recruited by clearly the former Georgia head coach at Miami and Mark Richt. Obviously, he's still being recruited by the current Georgia staff. And at South Carolina, he's being recruited by the former Georgia interim head coach, Brian McClendon, who, coached wide receivers at Georgia and now is the co-OC and wide receivers coach at South Carolina. So I think it's kind of a situation I don't know if I've seen before, where you've got coaches from, one school now recruiting a guy to three different schools. He's going to give South Carolina an opportunity to make their pitch. I think right now, with Mark Richt going to Miami, I probably give Miami the edge for this kid, even though he's committed to Georgia. But, you look at it, he's already taken his Miami visit. He's still got the South Carolina visit this week. He's got the Georgia visit next week. The week after this. So it's one of those situations where you never know if the positive feelings coming off a visit are going to maintain through other official visits. So I think it's going to be kind of fascinating to track, and I think it's one of these things where South Carolina, probably you'd put them third among those three right now prior to the official visit. But I think when he gets to campus, when he gets to Columbia, he's going to see very, very quickly just how early he would probably be able to play at South Carolina when you look at their depth chart. This is a 6'4", 205-pound kid that can go up and catch the football. Great athlete. Like I said, a four-star prospect. He's one of the top junior college wide receivers in the country. For South Carolina, he's got early impact written all over him.
All right, Wes, another receiver that we've talked about here on Gamecock Central Radio in recent weeks is Sam Bruce, and you talked about Miami, and that's where Sam Bruce is currently committed, or where he's been committed, although he's still taking official visits and still taking part in the recruiting process. And it's interesting to me that, South Carolina and Miami have turned out to be competing for a lot of the same prospects. And obviously, Travaris Robinson's got a lot to do with that, with his ties to the South Florida area. So talk about Sam Bruce and what's the latest on him.
Yeah, another very, very interesting recruitment. I look at Sam Bruce, and the buzz right now with him is actually that Ohio State has really made a push as of late. Urban Meyer took his in-home visit. For those who aren't crazy familiar with recruiting and all the rules, you only get one in-home visit, so it's often very strategic when a coach uses that. So, one in-home visit per prospect, obviously. So, you look at that. Urban Meyer took his in-home with Bruce this week, and there's a lot of Ohio State buzz right now. Now, what we're hearing from our Ohio State guys, our Ohio State rivals guys, is that wide receiver really more of a luxury position in this recruiting class for the Buckeyes, really a situation where their numbers are limited. So they're probably not going to want to wait until National Signing Day for Sam Bruce. So it's going to be one of those situations where if he commits to Ohio State, he's probably going to need to give them an answer sooner rather than later. We looked at his as a situation where it was probably going to drag out. Right now, if it's Ohio State, South Carolina would actually probably be able to just go ahead, and move on from Sam Bruce, because if it's going to be them, it would probably be sooner. But, the more we hear about his official visit to South Carolina, I've heard South Carolina actually is in the top two right now for Sam Bruce. That, Florida has been mentioned, but at this point, I don't think he ends up at Florida. And, in some ways, it almost feels like, I'm not saying this is necessarily the case, but it feels like he's maybe looking for an out, looking for a reason not to go to Miami. So even though he's committed to Miami, I'm not sure Miami is even in the top two right now with Sam Bruce. So again, I've said it multiple times here on the podcast, is that his recruitment is going to twist and turn potentially. It could go any number of ways. So, everything we're saying about him could quickly change. But right now, it just really feels like the Gamecocks are in a pretty, at least in the running with Ohio State possibly maybe having an edge right now.
Sam Bruce, receiver from the South Florida area, very highly regarded. Wes, you've mentioned on previous shows here on Gamecock Central Radio that Bruce is not a big receiver. He's more in that Ace Sanders or Bruce Ellington style of player.
Yeah, absolutely. I think he would probably remind people of a combination of an Ace Sanders or a Bruce Ellington. He's only 5'8", but he's got that quickness. Probably a little bit smaller than a Bruce Ellington, but a little bit thicker than an Ace Sanders. But he's the type you put in the slot, and you put in the punt return game, maybe the kick return game, and let him go make plays. I think you look at some of the other guys South Carolina's recruiting. You look at the guys like Kiel Pollard, who they're trying to flip from Arkansas. He's 6'1", 220 or so pounds. He's more in the big receiver role. Brian Edwards, who's already on campus, he's a bigger receiver. So Sam Bruce would kind of be a nice fit in this class, in that South Carolina clearly needs playmakers, but he would be a little bit different than some of the other receivers that they have and or are chasing.
All right, and with the Gamecocks moving to the spread, we know that receiver is definitely a position of need, and Sam Bruce would be a real nice addition to that slot receiver spot. So Sam Bruce, a name to keep an eye on for Gamecock football recruiting. This is Gamecock Central Radio. Emerson Phillips with Wes Mitchell. We invite you to download the free phone apps that allow you to listen to Gamecock Central Radio on your phone. We've got an iPhone app and an Android app. We're also on iTunes. Just search Gamecock Central Radio for all three. Wes, how about some other recruits for Gamecock fans to keep an eye on, as we are now just 13 days from signing day?
Yeah, no, all three of these weekends are going to be big recruiting weekends. We've actually talked to, I think, every single official visitor but one, and I should talk to the last one today. Every single official visitor from this past weekend we've talked to, except for the one, and had some type of update on them on the website. And we plan to do that again to the best of our ability this weekend and next weekend with our coverage on Gamecock Central. So all three of these weekends are going to be covered like big, huge recruiting weekends with, hop on there on Sunday if you're listening, and, you're going to have reactions from all these guys right after they leave campus. So another big weekend, as I said, local guy Stephen Davis Jr., of course, from Dutch Fork, son of the Stephen Davis, former Spartanburg and former Auburn and former Carolina Panthers standout, and some other guys to look at. Tyron Jones is a kid that I think really has a chance to be an immediate impact player for South Carolina if they get him. He's a junior college running back that at one time was at Alabama, transferred out, went junior college, and now is back looking for a home, and a kid that I think when you look at South Carolina's depth chart and you look at him, South Carolina in pretty good shape there, could really work out where Carolina gets a guy that could help out right away. And we actually have there's a full list, just a running tally there on the Insiders Forum that has every visitor that we know of for January 22nd weekend and for January 29th weekend.
All right, we encourage our listeners today to subscribe to Gamecock Central. That'll give you access to all the information on the Insiders Forum. Chris Clark and Wes Mitchell do a great job with providing up-to-the-minute Gamecock recruiting information. And if you are an insider, if you're a subscriber, you get access to all that information. And you can get breaking Gamecock news alerts delivered to your email inbox. Text USC to 42828. Text USC to 42828. Emerson Phillips with Wes Mitchell here. Wes, 13 days until signing day. Give us a couple of more storylines moving into signing day.
I think, it's always kind of a mad rush. You got, for South Carolina, you got some guys that are committed, that are looking at other schools. You've got Lloyd Cushenberry, his offensive line commitment, that is going to take a visit to Mississippi State this weekend. And, I think that it's probably going to be a situation where you see maybe a couple of guys in this recruiting class that are committed that don't end up at South Carolina, and then you're going to see South Carolina turn around and and fill those slots with guys that we've seen them recruiting very, very hard. So a lot of times I get the question, what's the number going to be? What's the final number? And I think that's very hard to answer right now because there's so many moving parts as far as this class goes. So that's something to watch. Is not only South Carolina adding guys, but a few guys dropping off. I've said for a while that I doubt Ja'Cory Morris, the linebacker commitment from Alabama, I doubt he ends up signing with South Carolina. I think you probably have a better chance of calling up the President of the United States and getting him to answer than you do Ja'Cory Morris. He does not do interviews at all, at all. So none of that's coming straight from him. But just from what I've heard, probably doesn't end up in South Carolina's class. But then I think it seems pretty clear to me that the I guess priority would be the way to say it, has been to add more defensive linemen. You look at the number of offers that have gone out to defensive line prospects, and to add more playmakers. Like I said, you look at Javon Wims coming in, you look at them chasing Sam Bruce, chasing Kill Pollard. It just feels like, just from a pure numbers standpoint, that adding pass rushers and adding playmakers at wide receiver, playmakers at running back has been just the major priority for South Carolina as they try to close out this class in a big way.
All right, the Gamecocks have already got 6 freshmen early enrollees that are on campus, that are enrolled. Brandon McElwain, C.J. Freeman, Brian Edwards among that group. So a number of new faces already on campus for the Gamecocks. And, Wes, it's really been an interesting 6 weeks since Will Muschamps was hired. We knew they were faced with some serious challenges coming in, trying to recruit with a staff that's been put together, somewhat piecemeal over the course of these 6 weeks. But I feel like Muschamps has done a great job, with what he's had to work with in a limited amount of time.
Yeah, absolutely. It's harder to evaluate. Luckily for them, most of these guys, the assistant coaches and Muschamps himself already had prospects that they were recruiting very hard and had evaluated at their previous stops. So I think that made it a little bit easier on South Carolina or easier on Muschamps in that, this wasn't a staff coming from the NFL where they would have had to start completely over. They already had evaluations. They already had relationships. So that has helped. At the same time, when you're coming in last minute, you do have to, I think you have to take a few more chances. You have to take a couple of guys you probably wouldn't have taken otherwise. But for the most part, it's just hard to sign 4-star, 5-star players that have been, recruited by a coach at the school for a year and a half. Now you're trying to do it in 2 months. But, it does happen. They're doing their best to make it happen, and they'll hope that the more valued or under, I guess, rated guys that they go after are guys they can develop and turn into players. So it's never really ideal, but I think they're handling it. I think they have experience handling it in the past, and they're handling it the best they can.
All right, Wes Mitchell beating the bushes to bring you the latest and most up-to-date Gamecock football recruiting information. Wes, thanks for joining us on Gamecock Central Radio.
Sounds good, man. We'll talk to you soon.
All right, he's Wes Mitchell, and I'm Emerson Phillips, and we got plenty more Gamecock football recruiting news coming your way here on Gamecock Central Radio.